Good evening, friends. It's Friday, and I'm back with another tale from my collection. Now it's time to grab a snack, dim the lights, and let me take you into the night with a story I call Desperation. Jimmy was bored. He was unemployed for several weeks now, and his funds were running short. Ever since the washing machine factory had cut production, the company he worked for had laid off a bunch of people. "And of course, yours truly was one of the first to go," he hollered at the ceiling. "Lord, I don't know what I did to make you mad at me, but if you'll just tell me, I swear I'll make it right." He looked at the phone like he expected it to ring. After a few moments, he got up and grabbed his keys on the way out the door. His trusty Jeep was waiting in the drive, and he taunted the engine to life. He looked around at his neighbors' houses with the manicured lawns, and then to his. Without a steady paycheck coming in, he had not wasted the money watering the lawn, and it was yellow with bare patches. He balled the tires all the way out of the driveway and halfway up the block. "I'm mad, and I don't care who knows it," he thought to himself. At the corner, he headed east and made for the convenience store. The clerk eyed him warily as he browsed through the newspaper rack. He didn't have much money, and he wanted to make sure that the paper he bought would have a good listing of jobs. His unemployment checks were just enough to pay the bills, and he had been forced to apply for food stamps or go hungry. He grabbed a paper and headed for the counter. The clerk cringed when he slammed the paper on the counter, and he went off. "What's your problem? I'm not here to rob you. I just want to buy this paper." He reached into his pocket for the correct change. $1, unbroken, was $1 more. The clerk had still not rang up the paper. "Come on, damn it. I already said I'm not going to rob you. Hell, I can't even afford a gun to do it with." He tossed the change on the counter and stormed out of the store. He drove to a secluded spot in the hills overlooking Lake Michigan and parked to read his paper. Looking out over the water, he could see a boat trolling beyond the surf for trout, and in the distance he saw a couple walking hand in hand, disappearing around the bend. He opened up the paper and began to scan the want ads. It was disappointing. There were all kinds of jobs for unskilled people, but none for trained steel casters like himself. He threw the paper into the back seat and closed his eyes to think. Where can a fellow with experience in steel casting go for work? The Northern Indiana docks is out. Those boys had it even worse than him since the French began to import steel. He considered Pittsburgh and decided that if he was going to move any distance, he would do it right and go somewhere way down south where it was warm. His thoughts were interrupted by a truck roaring past him and down onto the beach. Two guys got out and waited by the truck. The sun was almost down, but he could see the fishing boat was coming into shore. He watched as they unloaded a big box from the boat and put it into the bed of the truck. Then the guys in the truck handed over a briefcase and helped push the boat off the beach. Jimmy was confused. If this was California or Florida, he would have thought this was a drug transfer. But here in Michigan? He watched as the guys in the truck tied the box down. Suddenly there were flashing lights from several points on the boat, which were greeted by flashing lights around the truck. "Jesus, I'm witnessing a firefight. Those guys are shooting at each other," he thought as he watched in fascination. One of the guys at the truck fell and stopped moving, and his partner ran over to grab his gun. The guy was hiding behind the bed of the truck and shooting at the boat. Suddenly, one of the guys in the boat stumbled back with his finger on the trigger. The glare of the muzzle flash lit up the back of the boat as he fell, and suddenly the whole boat went up in a fireball. Jimmy shielded his eyes against the glare and looked back at the truck. The guy was there laying on his back, and the back of his head was open to the sand. Apparently, somebody had got in a lucky shot before the boat exploded. He watched the smoke clear and looked around to see if anyone else had witnessed what had happened, but he was alone. He got out of the Jeep and looked around. There was no one in sight, and he couldn't hear any vehicles. The only sounds were the waves gently lapping against the beach and the call of birds in the trees chirping their good nights. Curiosity got the best of him. and he hopped down into the Jeep and drove down to the truck. If anyone saw him now, he would have nothing to fear. He was just a witness trying to provide first aid. The guy behind the truck was wasted, and not even a miracle could reassemble his head. It looked as if it had exploded. Going around to the beach side, he found almost the same story. This guy had taken several rounds to the chest. He looked at the box and then glanced around. He was still alone, so he climbed into the bed and pulled the lid up to see what was inside. The box was full of cocaine. He didn't mess with drugs, but he knew from reading the papers that this much cocaine had to be worth at least $1 million. All of a sudden, he knew what to do. He jumped down and opened the tailgate of the truck. Then he lowered the gate of the Jeep and backed it up to the truck. The box was square and about 4 foot on a side. There was no way he could move it alone, so he got out the come-along and a tow strap he kept for emergencies. By anchoring the come-along to the roll cage of the Jeep and wrapping the tow strap to the base of the box, he was able to winch it into the back. When the rear gate of the Jeep was up, he quickly put the soft top up to hide the box and raced away from there. Jimmy was scared. He'd been driving around the outskirts of town for the last 2 hours, trying to figure out how to unload this stuff. If he got caught with it, he would face life in prison. Wouldn't have to worry about being employed that way, he thought. I need a drink. He pulled into a bar on the outskirts of town, and after taking a moment to collect himself, he headed for the door. He stopped halfway there. Hold it, Jimmy. You just gonna go inside and have a beer and leave that cocaine there in your truck? What, are you nuts? He looked back at the Jeep. Ah, hell, it's just a box. It ain't like it says dope all over the outside. I've been shopping and stopped for a beer, that's all. He went inside, scolding himself for talking to himself. They say as long as you don't answer yourself, you're okay, but he had answered himself. He ordered a beer and sat down at a booth in the shadows. Okay, I've got a truck full of dope in the parking lot and I don't know what to do with it. Where do I go from here? He looked at the TV over the bar. The news was on and the scene was of a shootout and the police had cordoned off the area of the beach where he had been. He moved to take a seat at the bar. Hey buddy, turn that up, would you? The bartender looked at the TV and turned it up. A pretty anchor woman was standing on the dunes almost exactly where he had been initially parked, telling the story of the scene below. This is a scene of what appears to be a shootout between a fishing boat and several vehicles on the shore. The police are still unsure exactly what happened, but they seem to think that there were 3 vehicles on the beach at one point, although only one was involved during the shootout. I spoke with the forensics investigator briefly, and he stated conclusively that only one vehicle could have been involved during the shootout, due to the lack of paint chips in the sand to indicate other vehicles. You can see by the wreckage along the surf what remains of the boat, and the police are speculating that a bullet punctured the fuel cell, causing the explosion. 2 men were found dead on the beach, and divers recovered 3 bodies from the water so far. Police are asking that anyone with information please call the Berrien County Sheriff's Department, especially those who were driving the other 2 vehicles. Jimmy finished his beer and headed for the Jeep. He knew what he needed to do, and he had to do it fast. If anyone had seen him driving away from that area of the beach, they would be sure to tell the cops, and he did not want to have the cargo around if they came to ask questions. Being a collector of odds and ends, he found it necessary to rent a storage unit a while back, and this is where he was headed. After unloading the box into the warehouse, he drove straight home. Once there, he began to relax and let the events of the day wash away in a hot shower. As an added precaution, he also washed his clothes and shoes. He also decided to wash the back of the Jeep out in the morning. Jimmy was up with the sun, making himself a hearty breakfast of eggs, pancakes, and sausages. Now that he had an idea he would be coming into money, he wasn't as worried about eating up his groceries. After breakfast, he washed the back of the Jeep and, so as not to arouse suspicion, he detailed the interior and waxed it. As he worked, he thought of how he was going to try to unload the stuff. Trying to sell it on the open market was out of the question. First, He didn't know anything about drugs, and second, he was afraid of running into the cops. He finally decided to check the paper and see if the dead guys were linked to anyone. For the first time in weeks, Jimmy took his checkbook out of the drawer and replaced it with the food stamps. He went to the market and got enough groceries to keep him a few days and bought a paper. Arriving at home, he saw that the front door was open. Had he left it open in his excitement? He wasn't sure. He carried the bags into the house and was putting the groceries away when he noticed someone had written on his television screen in big black marker. The message was simple. It said, "Call me," and there was a phone number underneath. He did not recognize the number, and suddenly he was scared all over again. He thought about going to the cops, but how could he explain why he hadn't come forth sooner? He thought about just leaving town, but he had spent the last of his cash on grub, and his next check wasn't due for another week. He calmed himself down and resolved to call the number. Maybe it was just a friend with a new number who had visited while he was gone. They were always welcome to just come on in, so that was possible. He screwed up his courage and picked up the phone. Slowly he dialed the number and listened to it ring. A gruff male voice answered. "Who is this?" "Jimmy." He was afraid to say more. "You got the stuff with you?" The voice was menacing. "Where is it? Did you give it to the cops?" "No, I got it hidden. Who is this?" "Shut up, I'll ask the questions. If you want to live to see the sunrise tomorrow, then you just wait there until we contact you again." The line went dead, and Jimmy sank down to the couch. Who were these guys? He had no doubt they'd kill him if he didn't cooperate, and he thought that maybe they would if he did. Now what? There wasn't much time to worry about what was going to happen. Just as he began to collect his thoughts, two guys walked in his house and pointed guns at him. Then another man in a business suit came in, followed by two more with guns. The man in the suit walked over and sat down on the chair across from him. He took out a cigar and a pocket knife and cut the end from the cigar. He put the cigar in his mouth, and one of the guys walked over and lit it before standing behind him. The man in the suit looked him up and down. "Are you a good boy, Jimmy?" Jimmy nodded. "That's nice. I did a little checking and found out you're currently unemployed, that right?" Jimmy cleared his throat. "Yes, sir." "See that, boys? Jimmy's not only a nice kid, but he also knows respect." He nodded at Jimmy. "You know why we're here, right?" Jimmy nodded again. "That's good, too. Now we don't have to play games. See, I was watching my boys last night when that unfortunate accident happened. I saw you go down there and take my box. I was wondering who knew about my shipment, so I checked up on you and your license plate. You know what I found?" Jimmy shook his head side to side. He was too scared to talk. "I found a guy who's down on his luck. He sees the action and figuring nobody's around, he grabs the goodies in hopes of making a few bucks. Am I right?" Jimmy found the courage to answer. Maybe this was going to be okay after all. "Yes, sir. It's just like you said." "So how much you figure to make off this deal?" Jimmy had no idea. He had guessed at the value, but he had not even thought about what he wanted for it. "I don't know what your box is worth, sir, but like you said, I'm down on my luck. I've been thinking about maybe moving in the South, but I have no money. How does 10% sound?" Jimmy had estimated the goods at $1 million, so 10% would be $100,000. More than enough to get the hell out of here. "You hear that, boys? Not only is Jimmy a good boy who knows respect, but he's also not a crook. He wants to give us our box for a measly finder's fee." He turned to Jimmy. "The box is worth just over $3 million. That comes out to $300,000 for you, am I right?" Jimmy was astounded. He had never even guessed there was that much there. "Yes, sir, you know your numbers." "Pay him." He crushed his cigar out on the arm of the chair and watched as one of his men tossed several stacks of money beside Jimmy. "There it is, Jimmy. Now where's my box?" Jimmy thought for a moment. "If I tell them, what's to stop them from just shooting me and taking it all?" "Nothing. I have to come up with a way to ensure my own safety." Jimmy reached into his pocket and pulled out the key to the warehouse. He handed it to the man. Here's the key to the place where I got it hidden. You let me out of here, and I'll call back in 2 hours and tell you the location. You wound me, boy. Here I give you cash, and you treat me with mistrust? Is that any way to treat your benefactor? Sir, I'm not as dumb as I was broke. There's nothing to stop you from shooting me the minute I tell you where the stuff is. Am I correct? Jimmy hoped this worked. You do have a point. How about this? I send one man with you. You go to a crowded place and call me back. I get the stuff, and you walk away when I verify the pickup. He sat back and lit another cigar. That works for me. Do we leave now? He moved to the edge of the couch. Sure, go on. I recommend you put that money in something, though. He blew smoke rings into the air and pointed to one of the men. You go with him. Jimmy grabbed the money and stuffed it into a night bag, along with a few changes of clothes. He went out to the Jeep, accompanied by one of the men, and they drove off. Roughly 2 hours later, they arrived at O'Hare Airport in Chicago, and the goon accompanied him to the ticket counter. There was a flight leaving for Dallas in 1 hour, and he purchased his first-class ticket, paying cash to make himself more conspicuous. They went to the boarding area, and Jimmy led the way to the courtesy phone. The area was packed with people waiting to board the flight, making him feel a little more confident. The goon dialed the number, spoke to someone on the other end, and handed Jimmy the phone. Jimmy gave the location of the box and went to sit by the boarding gate. The goon waited by the phone while keeping an eye on him. After what seemed forever, the phone rang, and the goon picked it up. He looked over at Jimmy, hung up the phone, and walked away. The plane left the ground without a hitch, and Jimmy was starting to relax when a stewardess tapped him lightly on the shoulder and spoke to him. She had a towel draped over her hand as if hiding something. Excuse me, I didn't hear you. Jimmy was all smiles. Would you like coffee, tea, or Coke? She smiled. Jimmy's heart lurched. Was this the end? He tried to maintain his composure. I thought it was coffee, tea, or milk. She giggled. No, it used to be, but we found that milk and flying don't mix well, so we changed it. Can I get you something, sir? Jimmy smiled and relaxed. I believe I'll have a soda. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one. Thank you for spending your time with me. Tell me what you think in the comments, and I'll be sure to join the conversation. That's all for now, but I'll be back again next Friday with another story, just for you. Until then, sleep well.